Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the voice of Chi-Town, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we have been out for a while, but it is good to be back. Here we are kicking off the beginning of Season 2. This is Episode 1 of the MOA broadcast, the Make It Out Alive broadcast. We kind of got away from things at the end of 2025, just so busy with the website. If you ever worked in retail at all, we have a retail website, gearconvoy.com. We sell knives, and a lot of it is customized stuff, and I have a custom knife business as well. And the end of the year, the last quarter is just always, it's crazy. Like I said, if you ever worked in retail, and even if you haven't, you're probably aware of how crazy things get. People want things by the holidays, and, you know, there are lots of last-minute decisions made and so forth. So anyway, we just didn't have time to give the show the amount of time and effort that we believe is necessary to create a quality product. So it was better to just go ahead and put it off instead of just, pumping out some crap to have something to put out. Now, you may notice the acoustics are a little different today. We're currently about 23 degrees here at 4,200 feet in the hills of Southern Oregon. So instead of doing this out in the shop, the knife shop where we usually do this, we're just doing it right in the living room. We got Bacon the dog and Kobra the black shop cat are sleeping next to each other here, right in front of a roaring fire. It is a toasty 70-something degrees in here. And so we're just going to do the show right here in the house. Like I said, looking at the fire is a great way to do it. And we'll just jump right in. So if you know there's any differences in the acoustics or whatever else, it is what it is. We'll try and, I don't want to heat the whole shop up just to record the show and all that. So we decided to do it right here. We'll see moving forward. We'll probably do this back in the shop again moving forward. I don't really like doing it in the sound booth. When you're in a sound booth, it's a very sterile environment, and I'm not a real emotional person, I don't think. But you don't pick up. You're kind of encased in this sound booth, and you're staring at a wall, and it's just a very cold environment. It doesn't really lend itself, in my opinion, to number one being I guess spontaneous and genuine enough, and you don't really bond with the listener the same way because you're just like staring at a wall. You don't have the energy. So I actually really like doing this right next to the fire here. I burn wood for heat in the mountains of Southern Oregon. And anyway, this is really nice. So we'll see what happens going forward. But we won't have the same acoustic quality as if we were doing it in the sound booth or even out in the shop. So if you notice some extra background noise or the dog or cat making noise, it is what it is. Trying not to get too caught up with it. Our highlights for Season 2, Episode 1 today include more First Amendment auditors, out of control cops, absolutely out of control cops, more dead hikers on the trail, the Bushcrafters axe fantasy, and more public nudity and urination in, you guessed it, the great state of Florida. Let's get right into it. Let me have a quick sip here, folks. I have my drink with me because, as you know, when you do voice work, and this is a radio show on KKFO Gold Country Radio 103.3 FM out of Klamath Falls, Oregon, and then it goes out as a podcast on the different platforms, Spotify and all that. So anyway, your voice kind of takes a beating. At least mine does. And so I got to have something to drink here. This iced, tasty beverage will help get me through the show tonight. But pardon me for just a moment. Okay, so as I had some time off from the show, doing some prep and just thinking about different things I wanted to cover in the new year, obviously in the last couple of, probably the last 2 or 3 months now, the movements and the activities of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and DHS here in the United States have been absolutely dominating the news cycle, and we're seeing all kinds of things, and we're seeing talk and rhetoric and shows and podcasts and all this stuff on both sides making their point and their argument, and it gets very, very heated. And don't worry, this isn't going where you may think it's going. I have wanted to take a moment to reaffirm the fact that we're going to continue to remain politically neutral here on the MOA broadcast. We're not going to take one side or the other. I absolutely have a lot of opinions. I mean, I'm doing a show. I'm talking into a microphone. I probably wouldn't have an opinion if I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't have strong opinions to share. But I couldn't. It's to the point now I can't hardly even watch. I migrated away from what they call the legacy media now, or the mainstream media, to getting my news on various social media platforms like X, which is Twitter, and even some stuff off TikTok and Instagram and so forth. But now even these different podcast shows, I'm not picking on anybody's the quality of their program, but so many of these shows now, both left and right, blue and red, whatever you want to call it, they have become so vitriolic and they're just so venomous and acrimonious in their opinions and the way they go after each other that I can't even watch some of the people that I used to enjoy watching because it's so much negativity all day long. And I'm not saying that's their fault or they're doing anything wrong, but for me personally, I can't take anymore. I mean, I scroll down the screen and I find myself swiping past or scrolling past, whatever, I don't know how the kids say it these days, but scrolling past all these people or shows or programs that I used to listen to because everybody, it's so personal and so angry and acrimonious and venomous now that I just can't sit there and do it, and I'm done with it. So anyway, the point of all that is, don't worry. You may be able to figure out what I may believe on a certain political thing or two or a view here or a news story or whatever else, but we're not going to make that the point of the show. We're not going to be casting support behind one side or the other and making this a partisan type of show. We're just here to get some news, a little entertainment, have some fun, learn how to make it out alive, and enjoy a good, clean, family-friendly show. We try really hard to keep the show PG or PG-13 at worst. This does go out of the radio first. We try and show a lot of respect to those folks. And that was another thing. I think I brought this up in past episodes. Whenever I started to prepare to do this show, I listened to a couple of snippets from probably 10 or 15 or 20 shows. And by snippets, I mean anywhere from 30 seconds to like 3 or 4 minutes, I guess. I don't know. And I'm not trying to say I purposely avoid anybody to not give them credit. I'm not a huge podcast fan myself, other than a handful that I've been listening to for years or whatever. And most of that's, informative stuff, nonfiction type stuff that's, fairly technical stuff. Anyway, would interest most people. But so many of these shows, and again, this is the 100% their right and their choice to do this. They're very adult in nature. And I don't mean, pornographic or anything like that, but they use lots of adult language and they talk about a lot of adult themes that you just couldn't really have playing in the background, or most people wouldn't have playing in the background or as the main thing if their kids were there with them, or if they were in public or whatever else. And I just got tired of so many of these things. They had so many dirty themes or just in excess of profanity to the point where it felt, like it was forced. And I just didn't want to do that. So, that's part of the reason for keeping this family friendly. I want everybody to be able to enjoy the show. I have had a couple of emails. In fact, I got over 600 emails I got to answer for the show here for the couple of months that I was out. Thank you very much for checking up on us. But I actually have had a couple people say, listen to the show with their family. Now, I doubt they sit around like in the 50s with their wood case radio and, let's listen to Wilson as he makes his little jokes. But, they have it playing somewhere around where their family or their children can hear. So we try and respect that and honor that and so forth. And if you don't like that or don't want to do that on your show or other shows you listen to, that's fine. Do whatever you want to do. I love freedom. So do what makes you happy. And that's just why we do this. I will say this before we move on to our next story. These people that are fighting with and obstructing ICE, guys, I don't care what political leanings you are. When you start to obstruct legitimate governmental operations, that's illegal. It's illegal. That's obstruction of justice, obstruction of governmental operations. There's probably 50 different things they can hit you with, including bullets, as we saw recently. There was that lady in Minnesota that was shot and killed during this whole, mishap with ICE, this, confrontation. Here's the thing that I see out of this. A lot of these people are being played. there are people, politicians and people in power that don't like what I hate to even say the name because everybody's going to get all riled up, but Trump is doing in his administration. But these are legitimate immigration laws that have been on the books for a very long time, and a lot of presidents have enforced these. A lot of administrations have enforced these laws, and it now all of a sudden the media really and other venues, they really did a fantastic job. What happened here in America? For those of you outside and even around the world to a degree, is one of the things, the polarization that was done. They basically created two camps. Either you are, no matter what all your other beliefs are, if you align yourself with any belief or anything that President Donald Trump is doing, you're pro-Trump. And if you are anti-Trump or against him, you cannot support or agree or believe a single thing that he does. If he cures cancer and you're anti-Trump, you have to disagree with it. It really is that insane. And really, this was a masterful move, a psychological operation, because it made it easy after years and years of this programming. What it boils down to is now, because they've got people so firmly divided in either anti or pro-Trump, period. There's nothing in the middle. It's all or nothing. You're either 100% for or 100% against him. So now all they've got to do to get the army of people that hate Trump against him is just say, Trump likes this thing. If they put out an article on their social media sites and the news and everything and run it nonstop that Trump says the sky is blue, you will have people saying that they disagree with it, and then the sky is not blue. That's the stupidest thing they ever heard. That's the most insane, crazy thing you can possibly imagine, because they are aligned firmly against Trump. And it's really sad because, like we're seeing now, some of these people that are being arrested by ICE, I don't know about all of them, I don't know. But we do know that some of them, they've shown the statistics, and if we take it at face value, which we have to a certain degree, some of these people are violent, nasty criminals. And they've got people defending violent, nasty criminals just because they're so anti-Trump or Trump administration. They're they're defending actions against narco terrorists and all kinds of. It's insane. So I guess that was the thing that I took away from it is some of these people are being played and being played big time by the media and other people on social media. These influencers, guarantee some of these influencers, or a lot of them even possibly, are bought and paid for, and they are swaying people to do things they would never, ever do, like jump in front of moving ICE vehicles and tackling and fighting with armed federal agents. But they're doing it because they're being told to by these influencers and by the media and so forth. And what a mess. So, yeah. Ugh. Like I said, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the political aspect of it, but it is obvious that some people are being influenced to do things that are, in my opinion, absolutely insane, like fighting with federal agents that are carrying out lawful orders. These aren't new radical orders that have just dropped in the last couple of weeks. These are laws that have been around for decades, if not more. So, there you go. It is what it is. You make your own decision. And like I said, we'll keep apolitical on that. But it is interesting to see the way people are being influenced and the power of social media. There are whole accounts that go on about this stuff, and people follow it and they get caught up in just the fever of it. And they get whipped up and do crazy things that I'll guarantee you they're going to regret, because people are getting shot and killed. They're going to jail. And some of these people are going to be going to prison for the things that they're doing while they're getting whipped up in this mob mentality and being pushed by the media and by influencers on social media and so forth. So just be careful, folks, about what you allow into your head, and then just as importantly about how you act on it. So the news is crazy. Let's go to our next story and get into the show here. We go to California, the San Gabriel Mountains near Los Angeles. Now, this story took place on December 29, 2025, so a couple of weeks ago. But they just got the resolution of this a couple of days after that, and obviously haven't done a show since then. So there was an incident where there were 3 fatalities on the San Gabriel Mountains in this mountain range near Los Angeles. The 3 people who died have been identified by authorities as Marcus Alexander Munch, I don't know how you pronounce it, Casanova, 19 years of age, Juan Serrat Lopez, 37 years of age, and Bayron Pedro Ramos Garcia, 36 years of age. Lopez and Garcia are both Guatemalan nationals. Marcus Casanova The 19-year-old is a young hiker from Seal Beach who was hiking on the Devil's Backbone Trail in the San Gabriel Mountains. They believe the 19-year-old fell 500 feet while on the Devil's Backbone Trail. I haven't been able to find, I looked through several stories, maybe it's out there and readily in front of me, but I didn't see a good explanation of what happened. I don't think the authorities probably quite know yet, because they don't even know if the other two bodies, Juan Lopez and Bayron Garcia, the Guatemalan nationals who are both living in Los Angeles, they don't even know if they're necessarily connected. It's not confirmed all three were together when the incidents happened. But harsh winter weather, strong winds, and icy terrain complicated the search and recovery efforts. Helicopters were initially unable to safely hoist the rescuers to reach the victims. So it's a whole mess. We got these three dead bodies out there. The 19-year-old, they believe, fell 500 feet. I have not been able to find a definitive or conclusive cause of death for the other two people. The way it came across in multiple stories that I was reading was they found the 19-year-old's body, and while that happened, they basically stumbled across these other two people. So we'll get into that in a second. But this Mount Baldy is known to be very hazardous, especially in wintertime when ice and the rapidly changing weather and snow can easily lead to falls, fatal accidents, and so forth. And this is the thing, from what I read, this is just about an hour or so outside of Los Angeles or Los Angeles. And there's the old saying, familiarity breeds contempt. And we see this in Portland. I've talked about this a number of times in the city of Portland as well. I used to live in Portland, now I'm in Southern Oregon. In the city of Portland, you had Mount Hood, which was just like, I don't know, I can't even remember now, probably 45 minutes to an hour outside of from downtown Portland, basically, or maybe a little bit more depending on where you were in the city. So it was very close. And so what happened is people, they quit being as cautious because the wilderness was so accessible and it was so easy to get out there and just jump on this trail and start walking up, they even think of it as climbing a lot of times. They're like, we're just going to hike and walk right up Mount Hood. And they forget that when you get at elevation, like right now I'm at 4,200 feet, which is, it's a decent elevation in the United States. Certainly nowhere near the highest. We're not even a mile high, but we're getting close. A mile's 5,280 feet. We're at 4,200 feet here in Oregon. The higher you go in elevation, your weather becomes more extreme. It changes very quickly. It can be very dangerous. And it doesn't sound like any of these people from the articles that I read, there were none that were very extensive, were prepared. So, it's one of those things where the familiarity breeds contempt kind of thing. In my opinion, this was so close to Los Angeles, I doubt these folks were prepared at all. They don't list their gear. They don't even list the cause of death. Obviously, the guy that fell 500 feet, I would imagine it would be, the blunt force trauma or impact or however you want to phrase it that ended his life. But were there would exposure, hunger, whatever else would have been played, we don't know. So just be careful out there, and we're not going to get too deep. This is a return episode, the first episode of the new season. We're going to kind of keep it moving, but thought that was amazing. I just saw there was another fatality as I was preparing the show in the last 24 hours in California as well, out in the wilderness. So man, you got to be careful. There are a number of things we've gone over in the past. We'll do it again another time because we got a lot to get through in this show. But preparation is the key. Number one, letting people know where you're going to be, when to expect you back, and if you're not there, when to call the cavalry. And then being prepared with your gear and so forth, and understanding what you're getting into. We did a story last year, a couple episodes back, about some guys that went swimming. They didn't understand about how currents worked in like cave water, not cave water. What was it? It was some type of river or something. I forget. But there were these extremely strong currents that just swirled and churned, and they jumped in one after another trying to save each other, and they were all 3 or 4 sucked in and drugged down because of these currents. So, it's about understanding what you're doing and knowing your limitations and knowing when to call the cavalry and when to not jump in to save somebody. I had a training class one time on confined spaces. And if you don't know what confined spaces, I forget the technical definition, but basically it's a small space. There's a fancy way of putting it, but we're talking about things like underground, like caverns, or like certain pipes or sewage things, whatever, things like that, confined space, anywhere you got to like kind of hunker down and get into. A lot of times these can be very dangerous because gases can get trapped in there, a whole number of things. And I didn't describe it very well as far as the definition, but I'm thinking on the spot here on the radio while I'm doing the audio production and everything else. Speaking of which, there won't be a video to this episode if you're waiting for that. I haven't got set up for that yet, but anyway, by the by. So in the training class, one of the things they tell you is just like when you're on a plane. If you experience a loss in altitude and the masks drop down and so forth, put your mask on first, because if you don't put your mask on first, you may pass out or die while you're trying to help other people. It's extremely important that you do certain, sometimes you have to do things in a certain order and prioritize self above others. Otherwise, everyone loses. And I'll never forget, one of the things they were talking about was that it was some type of either sulfur dioxide or some type of gas. I think it was like a sewage type gas or something that is particularly poisonous, okay? And it was saying if you stumble across this confined space and your buddy goes in there and he collapses, he's not wearing the proper breathing gear or whatever, he collapses. Whatever you do, don't go in there. Call the cavalry and, whoever the rescue is going to be for that particular operation, which should all be worked out beforehand, and make sure the proper precautions are taken. Because if he collapses and he's literally dying because the gas around him is heavier than air and it's forcing out all the oxygen or whatever, it's poisonous, whatever, and you go in there to drag him out and you breathe all that gas or that poison, you're going to die too. And then you both die and no one wins. There was this guy in there that they got so emotionally involved and invested in the situation. He was like, well, I'm not going to let my buddy die. And the instructor's like, listen, if, Jim, let's just call him Jim. Jim, if you go in there and try and drag that guy out without the proper respirator and other rescue materials and PPE, you're going to probably die too. I don't care. I'm not going to let my buddy die. Jim, think about this for a second. Are you going to go in there and jeopardize your own life and his because you have not prepared? Both of you are going to lose. Your families are going to lose. Both of you are going to die because you're emotionally refusing to let this guy, to wait and do the proper procedure. He may survive if you get the proper procedure done and get the rescue, blah, blah, blah. But no, he couldn't do it. He was too emotionally involved. He ended the class. I don't know I think they just passed him anyway, because sometimes, unfortunately, in training classes, they do that. But he was still of that mentality. There's no way he's going to let his buddy die. And that was kind of the mentality with these guys in the water there. They saw their buddies jumping in to save. So number one jumps in, he starts drowning. Number two jumps in, he starts drowning while trying to save number one. Number three sees this, and what does he do? Instead of going for help or trying to get a rope or a branch or whatever, he jumps in as well and drowns. All three of these young men jump in the water, and they drown trying to save each other because they didn't know what they were doing, and there were these strong currents. So anyway, that's part of the MOA philosophy and mentality of situational awareness and thinking ahead a few steps instead of just blindly doing something, because sometimes it may mean life or death. All right, where are we at on time here? Let's go ahead and skip that one. I was going to talk about processed food and fast food. I had some fast food the other day. Okay, hang on one second. I live in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town is about 35 miles or 35 minutes, however you want to split it, away. So anytime I want to eat, there's a burger joint that's here. They actually sell local beef. Their burgers are made from local beef. It's pretty close to home cooking. Okay, I eat there occasionally. Generally, though, I just cook at home and all my meals. Pretty much like, very much from scratch. Basically meat and rice, or mostly rice or eggs. Very, very simple diet, and very, very few, if any, processed ingredients on a regular basis. Okay, so I don't eat a lot of fast food. I was in town the other day and I tried, I don't want to name the restaurant, call them out, whatever, it doesn't matter, but it was some fast food place. I ordered the burger or taco, whatever in the world it was. Holy smokes, man. This stuff didn't even taste like real food. It's weird. It was like eating a candy bar. At first, it kind of tasted and felt good because there was meat and cheese and a tortilla or a bun, whatever. I don't know what it was. I had like a couple different places, Chipotle among them. And I got a bone to pick with Chipotle, but we'll get to that in another episode. It didn't even, at first it tasted good because it was hot, melted meat and cheese and so forth. But after a few bites, you're sitting here chewing and it's like, it doesn't even taste like real food. And this is the thing I've noticed. America is out of control. Between the morbid obesity and the addiction to fast food, Some people are eating fast food multiple times a week or even multiple times a day, eating this garbage and shoveling it down their gullets. They've completely become desensitized, I believe, in my opinion, desensitized to the taste of this garbage. I had some tacos. This one, again, I won't name the establishment. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. It didn't even taste like real meat. It was like a meat paste wrapped up with a bunch of melted cheese in a tortilla. It was disgusting. And I'm thinking, people, they eat this on the regular. When you become desensitized to something, you're sitting here shoveling this crap down your mouth or in your mouth, and you get desensitized. You put a bunch of hot sauce or whatever else, but you're putting this garbage in your body. Goodness knows what in the world. Have you seen the ingredients list for some of this stuff? I saw a video the other day of a guy who worked at Taco Bell. I'll say this about Taco Bell. He took a picture of the ingredients list. There was like 25 or 30 ingredients, it looked like, on this box of what was called taco meat filling. I don't know why they don't just call it taco meat, but it was called taco meat filling, if I recall correctly. There were so many ingredients in this. When you make tacos at home, what's in your meat filling? It's usually, for white people anyway, it's ground beef, right, and some seasoning. There must have been 20, 25, 30 ingredients in this list. And, this is the kind of stuff people are putting in there. That was just the taco meat filling. That wasn't the toppings, the cheeses, the whatever else. So, if you eat this stuff on the regular, do yourself a favor. Take a break for, if you can, 2, 3, 4 weeks of not eating this fast food, and then try it again. You're going to find probably that it tastes absolutely disgusting. It's gross. I was grossed out by a burger I had at a very popular burger chain, nationwide, worldwide, whatever, global burger chain. I hadn't had one of the burgers in a long time. I ate it. It didn't even taste like a burger. It tasted like a meat product. It was disgusting. I couldn't even finish it. It was so gross. And here's the interesting part. My dog Bacon typically accompanies me on these trips to town. I gave him the leftovers to this burger. He wouldn't even touch it. He'll normally eat anything made of meat. He sniffed and smelled the burger and literally just walked away from it. What does that tell you? Do you want to be putting that stuff in your body? I don't know, man. Ask yourself. You answer your own question there, but I don't. So there we go on that. Okay, you know what? Let's do the First Amendment auditor story, because we're not going to have time for the one on axes. We'll save that for later. These First Amendment auditors. Okay, I've talked about these a number of times in the past. If you're unfamiliar, First Amendment auditors are, the simplest way to put it, are guys and gals, whatever, that take their cell phones or cameras, they show up to a public location, and they basically start filming, because in the United States, we have a First Amendment constitutionally protected right to be able to film what we see in public. This has been settled and decided by the Supreme Court. Okay, so we have a constitutional right. There are some limitations on it, but not many. It's a pretty broad, open right. Okay. Some of these guys will just show up and they'll be quiet. They'll be silently, what's called a silent audit, and they'll just kind of stand around and film people in front of a restaurant or a post office or on government property, or which is public property, if you don't know, like a park or a city hall or whatever else. And some of them will get very loud and boisterous, and they will even, get very, very provocative and try and, provoke people and instigate even people into arguments over the fact that they can sit there and stare at them and film them in public. And some people naturally don't like this. So what we've seen is the logical progression of this. In the beginning, a lot of these audits were people just encountering people in the post office or in public or wherever else, and people would just come up to them and start stuff. What we're seeing now, and I talked about this, I quote unquote predicted this a couple of months ago, but it didn't take a genius to see this was coming. They're getting more and more provocative and provoking confrontations with people, civilians and police, by just getting downright nasty with people in public. We're seeing now that some of these First Amendment auditors, they will go to public places where they're on public property, or they're on public easements, which allow the right of travel or the ability to lawfully be there, the right to lawfully be there, and filming people. And people are getting irritated, and they're throwing that energy right back at them and getting them very worked up. And legally, technically, they're in the right, but they are really provoking people, and we're starting to see more and more some of these auditors, which I guess they're doing it for clicks or views or whatever else to get, monetary gain out of this, is my guess. They're being downright nasty with these people, and they're getting physical. I've seen a couple of them in the last couple of weeks where they're literally, pushing people, fist fighting people, and pepper spraying people that legally they may have the right to do it. They may be in the right, but imagine you're going to the grocery store, and there are guys that are just outside the door of the grocery store, and they're sticking cameras, they're filming you, and you just ask them what's going on, and 3 or 4 of them swarm around you and start, filming you in public. It's not necessarily that the auditors are doing anything wrong up to that point. Legally, they're covered. But what's the average person going to do? They're going to get defensive. They're going to be concerned about what's going on and wonder why are all these people filming. And then, from there, things kind of escalate when they either buck up on the auditors or, the auditors kind of keep pushing them and getting nasty and confrontational with them. So it's going to be interesting because sooner or later we're going to reach a tipping point or a breaking point, really, because some of these guys are they're getting out of control. I saw a couple the other day where if I was sitting on a jury, and I've had jury duty, it is an interesting story. I'll tell you that story sometime if you've never had jury duty before. Let me tell you, you people think they want a trial by a jury of their peers. Let me tell you, after sitting through jury duty, I don't know that I would say that anymore. There are some interesting, to put it very, very mildly and respectfully, some very interesting people out there that are just dying to serve on juries and cast judgment against someone else. So be careful what you wish for if you ever have to have a jury trial. But if I was on a jury, I would be like, I don't really know that would, rise to the level of, or remain at the level of legal activity or legal conduct, the way they're treating these people. Because they're goading and they're pushing people to get into a confrontation, and they're pushing people down on the ground. Now, granted, the people that are provoking or walking up to these auditors and these people filming, they should mind their own business and walk on. Don't be stupid. It's none of your business. What they're doing is legal. Leave them alone. But what it seems like is these guys are taking advantage. They're exploiting the fact that people don't understand what is happening, and they're using that to get, reactions and provoke some kind of response out of them. So anyway, my point is, sooner or later, somebody's going to get seriously hurt. And then it's going to be interesting to see if laws are changed or if there are modifications made to some of these First Amendment protections that we have, because people are abusing them to essentially for monetary gain on YouTube and social media and so forth. Some of these people have, 500,000 or 1 million or more followers on YouTube and other social media platforms that watch these interactions and these confrontations on a regular basis. So it's going to get interesting. That's enough people and enough occurrences to get people's attention. And sooner or later, like I said, someone's going to wind up getting seriously hurt beyond pepper spray or a fist fight. Someone's going to get shot, stabbed, or really beat down. And then it's going to be interesting to see what happens. So my opinion on the whole thing is, I'm a huge fan of freedom, and I think people should have their freedom. And if it's legal and you have the right to do it, then other people should probably just, butt out and keep their nose in their own business, mind their own business. But by the same token, when you're exploiting, kind of some, I wouldn't say little known, but maybe not widely known freedoms to get a reaction and provoke people so that you can get content for YouTube and social media, sooner or later, you're going to get what you're looking for, and it's probably not going to be positive. So I guess we'll dig into that more later, but we're running out of time to get to the crazy cops. There are a couple of stories and I had a couple of experiences myself in the last 2 or 3 months with local police officers. Some of these cops are getting absolutely out of control. And let me just say, we're not going to have time to dig into that segment, but I am not anti-law enforcement. I have a number of friends that are law enforcement on various levels, and we're not talking about the good cops and other law enforcement who do their job. What we're talking about, the scary thing, is some of these cops that are just, I don't know any other way to explain it other than they're almost downright insane and drunk with power, and they're on ego and power trips. There was an article, we'll get into our story, we'll get into it next episode, where this guy was out there singeing grass on his front lawn with like one of those propane, burners. He was just burning weeds, and he winds up getting arrested. The cops bust in his house and arrest him for arson in broad daylight for burning weeds on his own property. It's not even funny, but I'm watching this. It is so out of control because apparently they had some kind of prior issue with this dude. So they just trumped up some charges and arrested this guy for arson for burning weeds or singeing weeds in his own yard in broad daylight. So anyway, body cams and cell phones have definitely changed things. But we'll dig into that in another episode. We don't have time today. Let me get a quick sip and we're going to go ahead and close out this episode. All right, where are we at on time? It's time to close it down. Let's go to Florida. Our headline comes to us from CoralSpringsTalk.com. Man arrested after allegedly stealing whiskey, exposing himself, and urinating in public outside Coral Springs Plaza. Or as I like to think of it, Tuesday afternoon. A man was arrested after police say he stole whiskey from a Total Wine and More, exposed himself, and then urinated in public in front of children outside of a nearby restaurant. According to Coral Springs police, officers were dispatched on January 10 to the Total Wine and More located at 2564 North University Drive after a report of retail theft. Employees told police that a man later identified as Clinton McCutcheon, 42, of Pompano Beach, entered the store appearing extremely intoxicated, yelling at patrons and stumbling through the aisles with his pants around his ankles. Get my and put the in my right now. According to the report, staff say McCutcheon grabbed a bottle of Mission Craft Cocktail Manhattan whiskey, valued at $12.99. He ran out of the store without paying and left, despite employees' attempts to stop him. You and your stupid... Apparently, he was shouted. Surveillance video from inside the store reportedly captured the incident. Police later found McCutcheon sitting outside the Lao Hu Tong restaurant in the same shopping plaza, drinking from the same bottle of whiskey he allegedly had stolen. While officers were speaking with him, McCutcheon allegedly was shouting and allegedly pulled down his pants and exposed himself in the presence of children, claiming he, quote, needed to pee, unquote. While someone was shouting, somebody was shouting, get that out of here now, you, and stick it up. The report claims he then ignored requests to pull his pants back up and started peeing all over the sidewalk as witnesses looked on. McCutcheon was taken into custody and transported to Broward Health Coral Springs for medical clearance before being booked into the Broward County Main Jail. He faces charges of petty theft and disorderly intoxication in a public place. All right, folks, that's going to do it for today's show. Remember, don't wait until you have an emergency to prepare. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.